In this video, I'm going to be talking about the preparation basics that you need to get started today if rainy day walking is going to be a joy rather than a job. I live on an island in the South Pacific, and so being on an island we get a lot of rain here, sometimes a little too much. I decided a couple of years ago if I was to make the most of every season I'd need to get out there whatever the weather, because if I ended up waiting for summer to come, sometimes what we find is it doesn't really come. It can be, in New Zealand you get 4 seasons in one day. So the first thing to consider is what gear you'll be taking and just a few key items for wet weather that's going to just make it so much safer and comfortable for you. It's a lot easier to stay dry than it is to try and dry yourself out later. If you're unfamiliar with New Zealand's weather, all of the clips that I'm using for this video are from tracks that I've either walked in spring or summertime. Many of the trails I use have unbridged creek crossings which can get really slippery, and so I use my trekking poles to gauge the depth ahead of me as well as to help me keep my balance. And often it's safest to simply walk through rather than trying to balance or rock hop your way across. Now, as the seams aren't sealed, packs are never completely waterproof, especially in a downpour, so all those places that make your gear accessible also provide a path for rain to get in, and even water-resistant zippers will eventually let water in. So keep your pack protected by using a pack cover, and some packs come with these and some you'll need to buy them separately. On the inside of your pack, use a pack liner that everything can then go into, or separate your gear using different dry sacks for items like clothes and sleeping bags. Small waterproof cases are good for your phone, passport and wallet, and although less durable, Ziploc bags are useful for all sorts of small items. Large bin bags make a handy pack liner, and with a bit of ingenuity, a bin bag can also be used as a pack cover and even as a poncho. A towel always comes in handy for wiping or drying wet gear and hands, and you can then hang it off your pack to dry for when the rain passes. A headlamp or torch is essential, especially if you're in the bush, which is so much darker on a wet and dreary day. Having wet feet increases the risk of blisters, so be sure to take plenty of blister plasters. The next thing I wanted to talk about is clothing and knowing what actually not to bring and how to get your clothes rain ready. A bright colour will help brighten your mood on a grey day, and in an emergency it's much easier to see. Before you head out, check your outer layers are waterproof. You can do this by splashing some water onto your jacket, and if the water beads up and rolls away, it's going to be waterproof, it's good to go. If not, renew its water repellent to restore the performance, and if that doesn't work, head to the shops. I wear a cap under my rain hood to keep the rain off my face, particularly with my glasses, though sometimes they'll still fog up, especially if I'm working hard going uphill. So one of the problems of wearing glasses, they've been getting wet, which is why I kind of wear the cap to try and keep some of the rain off them, but they're fogging up as well, and I thought it was just my glasses, so I took them off to clean them, but actually the cloud has come right in here. Being a New Zealander, my favourite base layer is merino, which wicks away any moisture from my skin. If it's cold enough to need an insulation jacket, synthetic insulation is more practical than down, which loses much of its insulating ability if it gets wet, plus it takes an age to dry. Waterproof boots are good for keeping your feet dry initially, and that makes them good for the cold weather, but once wet, I found my boots became very heavy, and there's not a chance that they're going to dry overnight. The temperature's just not warm enough. More recently I've been trialling trail runners in place of my boots, as the mesh outer allows the water to drain, and by comparison to the boots, they will dry very quickly, they'll dry overnight. Gaiters help protect your socks and the top of your shoes or boots from rain, and also from stuff dropping down inside your boots. And I find when you're going through on a scrubby trail, they're great for protecting your shins from getting scratched from all the sticks and whatnot that's about. If I get wet on the trail, there's little chance my clothes will dry overnight, so I always take a change with me. And when you're using huts, often you can hang your clothes above the fireplace, but that can also be quite crowded with other people's clothes, so there's not much drying going on then. And so when I've got a change of clothes, at least at night time, I'm going to be comfortable, even if the next day I'm having to put the same wet gear back on. Trails can change as the weather changes, and there's some common complications that are best avoided. Before committing to your trip, check again the forecast and take note of any alerts. If it's been raining, the track is going to be slippery, whether it's muddy slopes, slimy rocks, or rain-slickened roots and leaves on the ground. You may need to slow down and take it more carefully, so allow longer than usual for your trip. Hypothermia happens. Telltale signs that you need to stop are the umbles, as in mumbling, grumbling, stumbling and tumbling. Stop for a mini break, dry out as best you can and eat some food. If the rain prevents you from stopping, at least try to eat and drink while you're still hiking. Streams and rivers will be running higher and faster than usual. If you're in any way unsure, don't attempt to cross it, it's simply not worth it. So I've just walked all this way, we've been walking nearly 8 hours. And the rivers are in flood, and the hut's on the other side of the smaller river. Andrew's just been down there trying to find a way across, but he can't, and it's absolutely soaking wet everywhere. The ground is just like a sponge, so we're going to have to put the tents up and stay on this side of the river. It's not safe to cross. I'm too scared to cross the river. If the weather should deteriorate unexpectedly, look out for quickly accessible higher ground in case of flash flooding, somewhere that you can get to at speed. With the right preparation and mindset, a rainy day hike can be one you'll remember for years to come, hopefully with some fondness, but at the very least with some epic stories to share once you get home again. Just remember, staying dry is easier than drying out after you're wet. Keep monitoring the weather, constantly self-assess and ditch the destination fever.